Heidi. Chapter 1. Heidi's first mountain climb. On a bright June morning, two figures, one a tall girl and the other a child, could be seen climbing a narrow mountain path that winds up from the pretty village of Marienfeld to the lofty heights of an allen mountain. In spite of the hot June sun, the child was clothed as if to keep off the bitterest frost. She did not look more than 5 years old, but what her natural figure was like would be hard to say, for she had on apparently two dresses, one above the other, and over these a thick red woolen shawl. Her small feet were shod in thick nailed mountain shoes. When the wayfarers came to the hamlet known as Dorfli, which is situated halfway up the mountain, they met with greetings from all sides, for the elder girl was now in her old home. As they were leaving the village, a voice called out, "Wait a moment, Ditz. If you are going on up the mountain, I will come along with you." The girl thus addressed stood still, and the child immediately let go her hand and seated herself on the ground. "Are you tired, Heidi?" asked her companion. "No, I'm hot," answered the child. "We shall soon get to the top now. You must walk bravely on a little longer and take good long steps, and in another hour we shall be there," said Tit. They were now joined by a stout, good-natured looking woman who walked on ahead with her old acquaintance. "And where are you going with the child?" asked the one who had just joined the party. "I suppose it is the child your sister left?" "Yes," answered Dit. "I'm taking her up to Uncle, where she must stay." "This child stay up there with Uncle? You must be out of your senses, Dit. How can you think of such a thing? The old man, however, will soon send you both packing off home again." "He cannot very well do that, seeing that he is her grandfather. He must do something for her. I have had a charge of the child till now, and I can tell you, Babel, I'm not going to give up the chance which has just fallen to me of getting a good place for her sake." "That would be all very well if he were like other people," said Babel. "But you know what he is, and what can he do with a child, especially with one so young? The child cannot possibly live with him." "But where are you thinking of going yourself?" "To Frankfurt, where an extra good place awaits me," answered Dit. "I am glad I am not a child," exclaimed Babel. "Not a creature knows anything about the old man up there. He will have nothing to do with anybody, and never sets his foot inside a church from one year's end to another. When he does come down once in a while, everybody clears out of his way. The mere sight of him, with his bush-gray eyebrows and immense beard, is alarming enough. All kinds of things are said about him. You did, however, must certainly have learnt a good deal concerning him from your sister." "Yes, but I'm not going to repeat what I heard. Suppose it should come to his ears, I should get into no end of trouble about it." Babel put her arm through Dit's in a confidential sort of way and said, "Now, do just tell me what is wrong with the old man. Was he always shunned as he is now? And was he always so cross? I assure you I will hold my tongue if you will tell me. Very well then, I will tell you, but just a moment, said it, looking around for Heidi, who had slipped away unnoticed. I see where she is, exclaimed Bobble. Look over there, and she pointed to a spot far away from the footpath. She is climbing up the slope yonder with Peter and his goat. But tell me about the old man. Did he ever have anything more than his 2 goats and his hut? I should think so indeed, replied Ditz with animation. He was at one time the owner of one of the largest farms in Domesh, where my mother used to live, but he drank and gambled away the whole of his property. And when this came known to his mother and father, they died of sorrow, one shortly after the other. Uncle, having nothing left to him but his bad name, disappeared, and it was heard that he had gone to Naples as a soldier. After 12 or 15 years, he reappeared in Domanshuk, bringing with him a young son whom he tried to place with some of his kinspeople. Every door, however, was shut in his face, for no one wished to have any more to do with him. Embittered by this treatment, he vowed never to set foot in Domeshut again, and he then came to Dwarfly, where she lived with his little boy. His wife, it seemed, had died shortly after the child's birth. He must have accumulated some money during his absence, for he apprenticed his son Tobias to a carpenter. He was a steady lad and kindly received by everyone in Dwarfly. His father, however, was still looked upon with suspicion, and it was even rumored that he had killed a man in some brawl at Naples. Why does everyone call him uncle? Surely he can't be uncle to everyone living in Dwarfly, asked Bobble. Our grandmothers were related, so we used to call him uncle. And as my father had family connections with so many people in Dwarfly, soon everyone fell into the habit of calling him uncle, explained Ditz. And what happened to Tobias? Further questions Bobble, who was listening with deep interest. Tobias was taught his trade in mills, and when he had served his apprenticeship, he came back to Dwarfly and married my sister Adelaide. But their happiness did not last long. 2 years after their marriage, Tobias was killed in an accident. His wife was so overcome with grief that she fell into a fever from which she had never recovered. She had always been rather delicate and subject to curious attacks, during which no one knew whether she was awake or sleeping, and so 2 months after Tobias had been carried to the grave, his wife followed him. Their sad fate was the talk of everybody far and near, and the general opinion was expressed that it was punishment which uncle deserved for the guiltless life he had led. Our minister endeavored to awaken his conscience, but the old man grew only more wrathful and stubborn and would not speak to a soul. All at once he heard that he had gone to live up on Elm Mountain, and that he did not intend to come down again. Since then he has led his solitary life up there, and everybody knows him now by the name of Elm Uncle. Mother and I took Adelaide's little one, then only a year old, into our care when mother died last year, and I went down to the bath to earn some money. I paid old Roussel to take care of her. So, you see, I have done my duty. Now it's uncle's turn. But where are you going to yourself, Babel? We are now halfway up the elm. We have just reached the place I wanted, answered Babel. I must see Peter's mother, who is doing some spinning for me. So goodbye, Dit, and good luck to you. She went toward the small dark brown hut, which stood a few steps away from the path in the hollow that afforded it some protection from the mountain wind. Here lived Peter, the 11-year-old boy, with his mother, Brigitta, and his blind grandmother, who was known to all the old and young in the neighborhood as just grandmother. Every morning, Peter went down to Dwarfly to bring up a flock of goats to browse on the mountain. At sundown, he went skipping down the mountain again with his light-footed animals. When he reached Dwarfly, he would give a shrill whistle, whereupon all the owners of the goats would come out to take home the animals that belonged to them. Dit had been standing for a good 10 minutes looking about her in every direction for some sign of children and the goats. Meanwhile, Heidi and the goatherd were climbing up by a far and roundabout way. For Peter knew many spots where all kinds of good food in the shape of shrubs and plants grew for his goat. The child, exhausted with the heat and weight of her thick clothes, panted and struggled after him. At first, with some difficulty, she said nothing, but her little eyes kept watching first Peter, as he sprang nimbly hither and thither on his bare feet, clad only in his short, light breeches, and then the slim-legged goats that went leaping over rocks and shrubs. All at once she sat down on the ground and began pulling off her shoes and stockings. Then she unwound the hot red shawl and took off her frock. But there was still another to unfasten, for Dit had put the Sunday dress on over the everyday one to save the trouble of carrying it. Quick as lightning, the everyday frocks followed the other, and now the child stood up, clad only in her light short-sleeved undergarment. She stretched out her little bare arms with glee, leaving her all close together in a tidy little heap. She went jumping and climbing up after Peter and the goats as nimbly as any of the party. Now that Heidi was able to move at her ease, she began to enter his conversation with Peter. She asked him how many goats he had, where he was going to with them, and what he had to do when he arrived there. At last, after some time, they came within view of Dit. Hardly had the latter caught sight of the little company climbing up towards her when she shrieked out, "Heidi, what have you been doing? What a sight you have made of yourself! Where are your 2 frocks and red wrapper, and the new shoes I bought, and the new stockings I knitted for you? Everything gone, not a thing left. What can you have been thinking of, Heidi? Where are all your clothes?" The child quietly pointed to a spot below on the mountainside and answered, "Down there." "You good-for-nothing little thing!" exclaimed Dit angrily. "What could have put it into your head to do that? What made you undress yourself? What do you mean by it?" "I don't want any clothes," said Heidi. "You wretched, thoughtless child! Have you no sense in you at all?" continued Dit. scolding and lamenting. "Peter, you go down and fetch them for me as quickly as you can, and you shall have something nice." And she held out a bright new piece of money to him that sparkled in the sun. Peter was immediately off down the steep mountainside, taking the shortest cut, and was back again so quickly with the clothes that even Dit was obliged to give him a word of praise as she handed him the promised money. Peter promptly thrust it into his pocket, and his face beamed with delight, for it was not often that he was the happy possessor of such riches. "You can carry the things up for me as far as Uncle's, as you are going the same way," went on Dit, who was preparing to continue her climb up the mountainside, which rose in a steep ascent immediately behind the Goddard huts. Peter willingly undertook to do this, and followed after her. After a climb of more than 3/4 of an hour, they reached the top of the Allen Mountain. Uncle's hut stood on the projection of the rock, exposed indeed to the winds, but where every ray of sun could rest upon it, and a full view could be had of valley beneath. Behind the hut stood 3 old fir trees with long, thick, unlopped branches. Beyond this rose a further wall of mountain, the lower heights still overgrown with beautiful grass and plants. Against the huts, on the side looking toward the valley, Uncle had put up a seat. Here he was sitting, his pipe in his mouth and his hands on his knees, quietly looking out, when the children, the goats, and Dit suddenly clambered into view. Heidi was at the top first. She went straight up to the old man, put out her hands, and said, "Good evening, grandfather." So, what is the meaning of this?" he asked gruffly, as he gave the child an abrupt shake of hands and gazed at her from under his bushy eyebrows. Heidi stared steadily back at him, in return with unflinching gaze. Meanwhile, Dit had come up, with Peter after her. "I wish you good day, Uncle," said Dit, as she walked toward him. "And I have brought you Tobias, an idolized child. You will hardly recognize her, as you have never seen her since she was a year old." "And what has the child to do with me up here?" asked the old man curtly. "You there!" He then called out to Peter, "Be off with your goats. You are none too early as it is, and take mine with you." Peter obeyed on the instant, and quickly disappeared. "The child is here to remain with you," Dit made answer. "I have done my duty by her for these 4 years, and now it is time for you to do yours." "That's it, is it?" said the old man, as he looked at her with a flash in his eye. "And when the child begins to fret and whine after you, what am I to do with her then?" "That's your affair," retorted Dit. "If you cannot arrange to keep her, do with her as you like. You will be answerable for the result if harm happens to her, though you have hardly need to add to the burden already on your conscience." Now Dit was not quite easy in her own conscience about what he was doing, and consequently was feeling hot and irritable, and said more than she had intended. As she uttered her last words, Uncle rose from his seat. He looked at her in a way that made her draw back a step or two. Then, flinging out his arm, he said to her in a commanding voice, "Be off with you this instant, and get back as quickly as you can to the place hence you came, and do not let me see your face again in a hurry." did not wait to be told twice. Goodbye to you then, and to you too, Heidi, she called, as she turned quickly away and started to descend the mountain at a running pace, which she did not slacken till she found herself safely again at Dwarfleaf.